Is there a way to find out, you think?
Possibly. I'm going to have to become a butcher.
That's the only way. Only way. I'm going to have to go to butcher school.
Presumably, yeah.
You know, I heard a rumor that you can get a good look at a T-bone by sticking your head up a butcher's. No, seriously, let's watch an ad.
Okay.
Let's watch an ad about a butcher.
Kenny, I need 50 pounds of roast beef.
Sorry, Pat. We're all out.
Oh, don't give me that.
What, did your wife wolf it down for breakfast? That came out wrong. Look, look at me. I mean, we probably weigh this.
It's a.
I mean, look at me.
I know.
I mean,
and he starts to say, "We probably win," and he's like, "Wait, that's not a good. Like, that's not a good way to go here."
Yeah. Oh, and he does say, "I need."
Yeah. Yes.
He said, "I need."
I need.
Yeah.
Well, because he's buying it not for himself.
Yeah. Yeah. I need 50 pounds. I need 50 pounds of roast beef. All right. Yeah. So so you proposed this commercial. Why did you select this one? So obviously it's the Cingular / AT&T wireless.
Yeah.
Which quote butcher commercial.
Correct. Yeah. I don't remember this from whatever year this came out, probably 2000, what, 7? 2007.
2007.
You know, so
it was a while ago now. That's 16 going on 17 years ago.
Yeah. And so it's not like an ad that I think probably like that ran long enough for me to even really remember it or anything like that. But, and I forget exactly how, like, I don't think I was even looking for commercials for this. I just happened upon it and it made me laugh and I immediately emailed it to you. I was like, let's do this one, you know?
Yeah.
Because it's very funny, you know? I love, yeah, I love the guy, whatever, the supplier's face, like just that face that he's making and it being silent is just, it's awesome. It's marvelous. Just, you can tell that he's visibly cracking up. He thinks it's hilarious. But yeah, you know, there was really no other reason other than I thought it was funny and pretty good ad.
Yeah. Very funny. I had forgotten about this ad. But yeah, I did remember it once, you know, I saw it. I was like, okay, I remember this ad. Yeah, super well acted. You know, I think that has something to do with it. You know, it's well executed. It's a very simple concept too, which I like that, you know. It's just a brief snippet conversation, right? There's really not much that's said, actually, right? You know, it's a brief, you know, you get dropped in. They start you right off with the action. So like it's interesting. You get hooked. Yeah. I mean, the humor, right? I mean, obviously that's the thing you're going to remember the most about, or you're going to perhaps is the most obvious. It's funny, you know? But I think clearly, because, you know, we can never just settle for the obvious. Right, Matt?
As much as we'd like to.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Our audience, our massive audience of our moms and all of their cousins scattered throughout the United States, right? They've come to expect a deep dive from Erik and Matt, right? You know, so let's dive a little deeper. Okay. You know, I'm a story nut. All right. So like, they obviously have a very quick story that they tell. Um, there's conflict, right? Which is the key. You know what? The key, Robert McKee. I think we've mentioned Robert McKee before. Storytelling icon, screenwriting story, like guru, coach, mentor, instructor. Um, he talks about how conflict is the thing that moves your story forward. And that if you do not have conflict, you have no actual movement or progress in your story. And also, then it's super boring. So the fact that like they create conflict, right? And how they do it, I think is like just very well done. It's
Yeah.
very well done. And then they wrap it in humor, right? They wrap it in humor. So it's a stylistic choice to do that. Um, but yeah, so I just think great, well done. They told a cool story. It was simple. It was interesting. Um, I mean, now the question is like, did the ad do its job beyond getting people to pay attention to it and get a chuckle out of it? What do you think?
I mean, so I think it's a clever way of conveying a benefit of the network of the product, right? It's instead of you can list the feature of fewest drop calls, right? How many times in that era did we hear that from everybody? Fewest drop
Mhm.
calls, and you become numb to features like that, especially when everybody's saying it, right? Like
Yeah,
think of
yeah, yeah.
even now, right? Like cell carriers, whatever, the America's fastest 5G network, 10G,
Yeah,
the bazillion, like who cares, how many, any of it, like
yeah,
you're numb to it. It means
yeah,
nothing because everybody says that they're the fastest or the largest or the most reliable and
yeah.
this kind of like paints it in a way where it's, yeah, of course they're not they're not advertising just to butchers and to suppliers to avoid
Oh, you're not.
silly
What?
misunderstandings. They're pointing it out in a way that makes you uh that helps it stand out, right? and
Yeah.
and you know especially at that moment in time, everybody had some sort of scenario where it's frustrating, like you dropped a call or you couldn't hear each other well or something like that was happening, right? and
Hmm.
and they did a nice job of like showing that, hey, if you were on AT&T, you could avoid this, whether or not that's true.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, absolutely. And I think that, yeah, 100% everything you just said. They did articulate the driving point, though, right? Or I guess the controlling idea around um, cell phones at the time was talking to people,
Right.
and when it mattered, you needed it to work. And they do trade on that reality, the Murphy's law of, right? And this happens now, like when you're talking to someone on the phone and it's breaking up, or like on Zoom or
Yeah.
some video conference, it's always at the moment when they're saying the important thing. The 13 minutes of preamble, you hear clearly. The 5 seconds, that's the punchline, that's when it breaks up, right? So, like, they nail that. So, it's like, this is super relatable. This
Yeah.
is exactly how it works. For
Yep.
whatever reason, the mobile phone gods have decided that these are the moments when, the service goes out. So they nail that. And I thought so yeah. So in terms of effect, like, yeah, it's super relatable. It's true. It's not just entertaining or funny. They're connecting with the truth of your life as it relates to the product and the use of the product. And so like, okay, so I got to believe that that's effective then, right? Because I can't see that not being effective, which is
Right.
so cool because that's hard to do. And some of the best ads, they do that so well, right? And I admire that in ads where they cannot just entertain and be generally relevant. They can find a way to do it with a experience of the product or service that is super core, right?
Right.
And so, like, I think that's impressive that they are able to do that. Um, go ahead.
Yeah, it's like I think that's like a yeah, a good point. It's easy to be funny or entertaining but it's difficult to have it be entertaining and relevant to the product and relevant to the audience, right? Like
Yeah.
like if you googled funniest commercials, like yeah, there's things that are
Oh,
as
sure.
funny as this. Are they as effective? Almost definitely not. I mean, one that comes to mind for whatever reason, I've always thought this was a very funny one. Remember the Doritos commercial? Or I think it was Doritos. It was like free Doritos. I think it was like a Magic 8 Ball or I forget what, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
he
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah. I vaguely remember. Yeah, yeah,
hucks it at the vending machine and breaks it.
yeah,
I- it's funny and it's shocking and but
yeah.
it has nothing to do with the product
Yeah,
or
the
it's like
Heineken commercial where you see the wives in a huge walk-in closet, and you can tell, like, they must have had the house remodeled, and the homeowner wife is, like, showing her girlfriends or whatever, and then all of a sudden you hear these high-pitched squeals coming from the next room, and the camera pans over there, and it's all the husbands
yeah,
in a walk-in beer cooler filled
yeah,
with Heinekens,
yeah,
right? And it's hilarious.
but
And
it's
I
not
remember
realistic.
that because I remembered the fact that this has nothing to do with Heineken and probably is not going to help more. Maybe there's like an immediate, maybe there's a short-lived kind of thing, but it was not easy always to remember what beer that was for, and that is a risk you take, I think, in all advertising where you're using, and you have to, I mean, entertainment, not just humor, but entertainment is the price of attention, right? That's how you get people's attention, is through some sort of entertainment. Humor is difficult to do, but works well, but then does it actually tie in? And that's why I wonder about this in the moment. So what was the purpose of this ad? If the purpose of this ad is to say that AT&T signals better, well, at the end of the day, though, like, everyone is still saying the same thing. So, like, is this actually more effective of making you think AT&T's is better? But what perhaps it did do is, so I don't know about that, but maybe what it did do is it got you to stick around to the end of the commercial where they show the Cingular logo and the AT&T logo fusing, when the Cingular logo fuses behind the AT&T logo, because at that time AT&T had purchased Cingular
Yeah.
and was converting Cingular over to AT&T wireless.
Right.
So maybe it was effective in being able to get people to see that. But then I wonder, like, could you do a commercial that's about that, but that doesn't suck, right? But maybe you didn't need to, right? I don't know. But I looked it up just real quickly, and it was super confusing. But I guess what happened, because this was a bit of a deal, because like just a few years before, Cingular had bought AT&T Wireless and changed it. Cingular's parent company changed it to Cingular, or merged AT&T into Cingular, because there was an AT&T long distance that still existed. And AT&T Wireless was an outgrowth of the AT&T long distance business, and they made it a standalone concern as AT&T Wireless. So they couldn't use AT&T Wireless because AT&T long distance still existed. So they changed it to Cingular. And then guess who buys Cingular? AT&T long distance company does.
Yeah.
So what do? They're like, well, we want to be AT&T again. So just like 3 years later. So I guess there's people that were walking around with AT&T phones with Cingular service, and they were trying to get all the phones to be Cingular phones. And just when that was starting to happen,
Yeah.
now they're shifting it all back to AT&T. So that was part of the point of this campaign, was to get people to realize that Cingular was becoming AT&T. And I guess they had spent, of course, billions of dollars getting people used to the idea of Cingular wireless. But I guess the justification was, Well, because they're not going to have all these different advertising streams for all these different products, they were in the long run going to save billions of dollars. So let's just bite the bullet, go with the more legacy brand of AT&T and convert over back, so to speak, to that.
Yeah.
How crazy, right? And there's no way they could have predicted that. This wasn't like, I don't think like corporate short-sightedness. It was, they knew they couldn't use the AT&T name before. That was the right thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this, by a stroke of luck, it came back around. Luck, bad luck, I don't know, however you want to look at it. So I just thought that was a confusing but interesting detail that might have perhaps somehow influenced
So
this campaign, right?
yeah, I had always known that AT&T ended up purchasing Cingular. I didn't know that originally Cingular had purchased AT&T Wireless from AT&T. Yeah, it is it is definitely confusing, and I mean, like phone companies in general in the United States have always been a little confusing,
Yeah.
throughout all of its history, New York Telephone, Bell Atlantic, Ma Bell, like all the different ones that ended up. I don't know if they ended up being, if this was just like an industry term or if it was well known, but like all the baby bells like that ended up
Mhm,
becoming
mhm,
Verizon,
mhm.
and even Verizon and Verizon Wireless for the longest time were like two different
Yeah.
entities.
I'm sure like if you had someone who really knew all about it and could map it out and do it in a cogent way, it probably would all make sense. But as I was reading an article just about this one,
Yeah,
I mean, Singular had two different parent companies. AT&T was involved. I mean, like, I'm not even sure how I just described it is letter of the
totally accurate.
law,
Yeah,
exactly how it went, but like spirit of the law,
yeah.
figuratively, it kind of captures what happened, right? Enough for like our moms and our mom's cousins. All
do,
right.
do you want to like scare the shit out of like any legal department? Well, the spirit of the law.
You're right. Yes. I mean, I'm more of like a what does the Constitution imply kind of guy. You know what I mean? Let's interpret this puppy, you know? Um, yeah, you're right. But there's a reason why I'm not an attorney. So, right. And I also think grammar is a suggestion, you know? So, anyway, I thought that like, so, I mean, how much does that influence this campaign? I'm not totally sure, but it explains why at the end they show the two logos doing the thing. And I guess if the commercial keeps people around to see that part,
Yeah,
then I guess
valuable.
at least it did that. But in terms of differentiating AT&T, it's like someone saying, it's like you're choosing to like date someone and you got like four choices, but I'm nice and will treat you right and the others won't. And then the next one says, but I'm nice and I'll treat you right. And by the way, the others won't. And then the other one goes, but you know, I'm nice and I'll treat you well. And don't forget the others won't. It's
Yeah,
almost like, you're finding a creative and way to get a true point across, but does it actually differentiate you as a brand? And is that association actually effective if it's the exact same point that everyone else is trying to make? Because at that time, that's what I was trying to make. And now, not that I've studied, and maybe I should have, what wireless companies are doing now, because I do think it's an interesting like time capsule that what they were
yeah,
talking about was how important it is for you to hear the person on the other side. That has not changed. People do not seem to give a crap about how important it is to hear someone now, though. You mentioned it earlier, the fastest network. A lot of it has to do with like, well, this thing that we call a phone that has the ability to act as a phone,
yeah,
but is really not a phone,
yeah,
right? That's what it seems to be about now, right? So I think it's an interesting, like, again, like I guess time capsule of how people thought about that product back then that obviously influenced how they talked about it, and now it's a little different, you know.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, it was already starting to shift at this time. So I almost wonder, the setting for the joke, right? And of course, this was definitely part of a larger campaign. And I didn't do any research to see what other commercials were part of the campaign, but
Yeah.
it is the choice for it to be business related, maybe like purposeful, uh, because everybody was using cell phones at this point, or most people had,
Mhm.
virtually everybody had cell phones. But I think that still was like this connotation of it's not reliable enough to do business, right? And so
Mhm.
and I'm probably going down a path that wasn't even thought of, but was it maybe like, hey, we
I
can
don't
show
know. I mean,
people, if we can show guys doing business over
right,
phones, people doing business over phones, over cell phones, does that maybe like make AT&T look a little bit more
right.
attractive to a business
Yeah.
person, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I
Maybe.
mean, that's the sort of thing that sounds plausible, though. Like, you're right, we can't prove that, but it sounds like the sort of thing that someone might think, like, okay, hey, um, or not so much. It could even be like maybe it wasn't a distrust of it for business, but maybe if you're using it for business, and so maybe that's a positioning thing, right? Maybe AT&T is like, oh, maybe we have the opportunity to position ourselves as the carrier for professionals or for business use,
Right.
not necessarily focusing on personal use.
Yeah.
But I honestly don't know what the other carriers at the time were featuring
Well, you
related.
remember
And I looked
Sprint?
up this campaign. You really can't find a lot of good literature on it,
There
right?
isn't.
Like there isn't a whole lot of information. BBDO did it. It talked about who wrote it, who produced it, all that
Yeah.
sort of stuff, who acted in it, but it didn't really give anything about like what the strategy was
Yeah.
behind it. So we have to just sound like we know what we're talking about and guess.
Sure. I mean, you mentioned like you don't know what the other carriers, like how they were positioning themselves, but there was Sprint, right? And wasn't
Yeah.
that also like, wasn't it Sprint Nextel or something like that at one point? And
Well, because Sprint and Nextel were different, and then Sprint merged or bought Nextel.
but they
And who
definitely
got
positioned.
Sprint? Did T-Mobile take Sprint?
I think much more recently than this, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I think those are the same thing at this point now. There is no Sprint anymore, is
No, it's right
there?
there. I think T-Mobile bought
Yeah.
Sprint or
One of
whatever.
America's four companies. Um
Yeah.
uh but yeah, like Sprint definitely was after like the blue collar hard working like type, because they
Well, that's what Nextel was definitely about because Nextel had
right.
the walkie-talkie feature.
Yeah, and Sprint ended up with that.
Yes.
So like
Yes.
that, but maybe this was, they're yeah, maybe a little bit them AT&T saying like we can also do this,
Yeah.
probably not. But I mean, the smartest thing AT&T ever did was like get exclusive rights to the iPhone when it first came out. Like that
Mm.
skyrocketed.
I
Like,
forgot about that.
yeah, it was the only place you could get it was Singular.
That's right. That's right. I remember that. That's right.
Yeah.
Now that you say that. Yeah. So I mean, so I don't really have much more to say about this particular spot, but it's like it's a little bit again, it's like I'll say a one-hit wonder, right? But it
Yeah.
was a snapshot kind of concept or campaign. And you know, cool to walk down memory lane.
Yeah.
Good commercial though, I think. I mean, but again, overall, did it like really make you go, wow, AT&T?
Probably
I'm not
not.
sure. I'm not sure.
But like to your point, Singular moving to AT&T or becoming, those things merging or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, it does capture your attention. So, and like this will be the last thing I say about it. That like end cap, where they do that, like what the outro, whatever you want to call it. Uh,
Yeah.
I actually saw a couple of different versions of this, and each time it was a different like sort of animation of that and
Mm,
the deal going on. So like they were
yeah.
able to say, okay, this month only, So I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
it does capture the attention and it gets people through the doors,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
uh, you know, it's performative or performance ad maybe, So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but a good joke.
Yeah. Still, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. When we watched it, I was laughing out loud.
Yeah,
I was giggling.
good. Me too.
So, Yeah. Well, thanks for that one.
Yep. I meant to jump in there. You were like, you got your doers, your takers, and I was your candlestick makers.
Ooh, no,
Oh, I
I
missed
don't
the
think that applies here